was mentioned in the last video, starting to look at maybe doing a freehand banner design for the High Elf Standard Bearer. I've been cutting up some templates, trying to get something that I think will work okay for size without hiding everything that you've just spent a day or two painting. I think I've got something roughly there. And the concept I'm going for is some sort of elf princess type design. Kind of full face, maybe front on, maybe side on. And she's going to be looking a bit sad, a bit down. There could be some lore, some story behind her, who she is. What got me on to doing something like this was a video that I saw on YouTube, a guy called Dr. Luke Blacksell, who had a 3rd edition Chaos Fantasy Army. Just probably one of the best old school, old hammer armies that you'll see painted in the old style. And all these units had these freehand banners, and I think most of them, if not all of them, featured some sort of full face, some sort of character on them all, and it looked really good, really striking. So I thought I would have a bit of a go at doing something similar, which involves getting a pencil and trying to sketch a few things. So in general, we've got our size, we know roughly how much space we've got to play with. So it's just a case of just starting to sketch out some ovals. Just to kind of get some proportions and work out how it should look. And it's not about making something look hyper realistic. It's more about creating something that's illustrative and like a piece of graphic design almost, like something that can go onto a banner. I'm almost going for stained glass window in terms of appearance. So you'd want to make sure that you're creating something that's simple and symmetrical, perhaps. But I mean, it's always going to look hand drawn or hand painted. And the thing that I'm wanting to do is make sure that there's a tear in one eye. We can paint in. So I always think for the elves going off to fight these battles that I think they're delighted about it. And there is a kind of melancholy sadness about them that I want to kind of capture here. And it would be the kind of golden hair, and I use the yellow for that, I think. So I'm just using this as a 2H pencil. You can use the softer ones, you know, if you feel you want to kind of get some darker lines in once you've started defining the shape a bit more. So something like that. And then we can see our template. Everything above the line will just be a loop to go over the back for gluing. So we need something that's going to fit. Something that will just fill the shape roughly there. Yeah, something like that. Something a bit Zelda. Doing something like this means you've got a bit of space around, a bit of useful space around the figure to do something in the background, maybe a night sky, some stars, blue and white stripes, something like that. You could do a few different things. Get a gem in, or a heart, to go with the rest of the miniatures. And you can always pick up some of the design features, you know, like where I've painted these red and green sections. You know, there's nothing stopping doing some of that. And then you can pick up the same colours to tie it in with the actual painted miniatures. So that's quite a good layout, that one. There's a little bit of room to play with. Kind of wanted to try one, like a side profile also. Maybe just to try it to see how it looks. It's going to be a really obscure reference, but the image I have in my mind is a game back on the Commodore Amiga 500 that I had called Realms. And it was one of these, I suppose, I don't possibly call it not really a god sim, but you took control of one faction on these little islands, and there were dwarfs, elves, and orcs, and you could play as one of them, and you would take control of cities and fight little battles. But it was one of these Amiga games that had an amazing intro, as a lot of them did. They had these elaborate intros that took up most of the first disc. And during that intro, there's a character side profile. And then later you see the character's face from the front, and there's a tear comes down from one of the eyes as the the guys go off in a boat off to war or whatever. And that's the the source thought for what I'm trying to do here. It doesn't actually look like this, but I think maybe one person in about a million will get that reference to that game. I don't think it was very well known, but worth trying if you can. Okay, so for a side on, yeah, wavy line there looks better for here. I'm just, I don't really know what I'm doing with this. I think that's the main thing with sketching. You just kind of keep putting down lines until something starts to appear, and I quite like this shape there. And the tier there. Yeah, I think that's quite good as well. I mean, I'd like to have maybe got an arrow in somewhere, because this is going to tend to be a standard bearer stood in with the archers. But I'm not sure quite how, or if I want to do that. You know, sometimes in a set of playing cards, the queen, or the king and the jack will be holding something, you know, a scepter or a sword. Yeah, but I'm quite happy with the proportions there. And the way the hair can sweep round. How could you have a rain of arrows in the background? Nah, I don't know. You've just got to remember that whatever you do, it's small. Maybe you shouldn't get too carried away. Yeah, so that's a couple, pretty much what I'm after actually, a kind of front-on option. Maybe with some sort of crown. I wonder if a crown would be good. Yeah, some sort of night sky or dark blue. Maybe some stars, and that would be good. So probably take these two designs and maybe work them up a bit more. Yeah, I prefer the tone just with the eyes closed. I think looking down slightly, eyes closed, I think it's going to have more of the kind of look that I'm wanting, and what reminds me of that old game. The advantage with the side profile design that I've got here is that it's easier to make it more of a graphic sort of design, an illustration, rather than trying to be a accurate drawing. Yeah, I think that looks quite elf-like. You can then come in with a black pen with a kind of fine point on it. Like that, almost turn it into a logo. Yeah, I've come back to this one. I think the problem with the side-on ones is that it ends up looking like a shampoo advert, like a logo for a shampoo thing or whatever. But this one, I think, is more what I had in mind from the start, and I've just kind of outlined it a bit with the black pen just to kind of make it a bit more clear to me. So the next step with something like that, and because we've done some pen over it, we can come back in with an eraser just to get a clean outline design. So I think I will scan that into the computer, combine it with a layout for the banner design, and then I can print that off and get it painted. Okay, so I've just moved to the PC now to do a little bit of work in Adobe Illustrator. The idea is to set up the High Elf banner in a way that I can print off a few copies of it, which will make it easier to paint, so you've got a backup. And all I've done so far is scan in the image I want to use, which you can see there, which I'm happy with in terms of it's a nice, clean logo style illustration. I think it's going to be clear enough and simple enough to reproduce and paint by hand when it comes to it. But we need to get a little template drawn up, just using the tools in Illustrator and using our paper guide to do some measurements. Okay, so that's a rough outline for the banner, and we can position our sketch. Something that's quite useful in Adobe Illustrator is the image trace effect. So if I go up to Window and then choose Image Trace, what you can do is immediately turn your scanned in sketch into a black and white logo. So I don't know if you noticed the change there, but now you have a vector-based, path-based representation of your, what was a pencil sketch. Meaning that if you wanted to, you could blow this thing up to any size and it doesn't pixelate. And my plan with this is just to paint over it after printing the banner. And this will just be something that gets coloured in. And something else I would like to add is maybe a high elf rune or emblem somewhere on the banner. I had found this on a Google image search, and I think I wanted to use one of these. I think this one here, remembrance, memory. I think I'm going to go for something like that. Just for the lore of this banner, maybe some fallen princess or elven queen that these high elves are fighting for, or the memory of. So if I take this pretty poor quality scan from a Google search, I just isolate that on its own. What I'm thinking is something like that could go towards the bottom of the banner, if I can fit it in. And then what I'm also thinking is that we can use our image tracing function here to get a clean version of the scan. So that gives us one big converted sheet of these emblems. We now want to just get this one on its own, so I can expand that. Say OK. And then I'm going to ungroup it and ungroup it again, hopefully till I get the symbol on its own like that. So that gives me that. I can just get rid of all the rest, I don't want those. We now have one clean representation of the rune. What I can do now is change the colour of it to have a white infill and give it a black outline. And then we can reduce it down in size to the lower area. Remember that when we paint over this, we can eliminate some of the lines, but if I wanted to come in here and edit some of the line work on the elf, we can do that. We can expand that as an object, and that gives us something we can start to edit. We can ungroup it, so that starts separating out some of the bits. The bit that's getting in the way is this line that I've drawn down here, so we can chop that off in a number of different ways. I can use the knife tool here and cut that lower piece off, then simply delete it and then take our rune back in, make some room for it there. Okay, so that's generally the shape that I'm happy with and the layout that I like. So all I'm going to do now is on the sheet is take a couple of copies of this. Doesn't really matter where on the sheet I do this. And then that gives us a few copies to work with in case you make a mistake on one of them when painting. And that's it really. So I'll print this off and then get on with painting it. Okay, I've got the printout here, and on the back of the paper I have blocked in some colour. Just want to give myself some options and see how the paper reacts when painted on. And to be fair, it's held up, it's not wrinkled up too much. All I had done with the paper is give it a spray on both sides using the GW Monotorum varnish, which is a reasonably matte varnish, kind of a slight satin finish to it, but you can barely see it on the paper. So I think first of all I'm going to transfer the same colour onto the front side. I have 3 to play with. I can make mistakes and move on to the next one if I need to. So I'm just going to add some blue now. This is Calidor Sky. And this is going to take 2 or 3 coats to get a nice finish. I tend to do a kind of colour blend anyway, so probably get away with just a couple of coats. But I don't think you should be tempted to try and paint it on too thick in one pass. And you want to be able to see through to the black lines as your guide. And I'm just being neat and tidy around the character. Okay, so I've taken some Nagaroth Night, which is a kind of purple colour. I'm just going to start blending that across, mixing it in with the previous blue, and painting in a direction away from the character. So we're trying to imply a bit of a glow coming from the elf, the blue colour blending off into a darker kind of midnight colour, a little bit more of the purple this time. And always just painting away from the character. And then final pass just almost with the pure Nagaroth Night colour. And I'm using the wet palette here also, so that the paints are nice and thinned. Don't want them too wet, but we don't want them going on thick and leaving brush marks too much. Okay, depending on the lighting and how well this comes out in the camera, hopefully you can make out that effect happening there. Some Lothern blue now, and I'm just going to try and use a little bit of that around the edge of the character. And this will take 2 or 3 passes to build up that effect. And lastly, I've just added a little bit of white into the mix. Okay, so hopefully that comes out okay in the camera. Just try to give her that ethereal glow against a dark background, which will help her really project forward from the banner. The next area to paint is the skin, and I'm just going straight to Flayed One Flesh for that. Something quite light This will just be the base coat for the skin. I've moved down the size for the brush now, just so it can be neat and stay between the lines. This actually works quite well going over the lines a little bit, but you don't want to completely lose the lines. Okay, I've got some pallid witch flesh now, which is thinned with some water. Okay, for the hair, now I've got some Overland Sunset. Okay, moving up to the Uriel yellow now. Just try to create that really bright golden look. Starting to get finished now. We're getting closer to. Just colour in some of these last few shapes. And remembering our detail here of the red-green, I'll give a nod to that in the banner. Having made the template, it really is just like a colouring in book now. You don't have to think too much about what things should look like. You've already established that. And for the emblem at the bottom, I think I'll use yellow for that. If you do try this, you need some decent brushes, some good points. But having gotten this far, I would recommend it. This is the first banner I've ever done, and so far it's going okay. Quite fun to do, and the advantage being you end up with something that is unique. Just got some Celestra grey now. Just to imply some shading. Just try to paint this heart pendant in the same way I would if it were a gem on the miniature. Okay, I think pretty much there with this. I don't think it really needs much more, certainly without risking taking it too far, but of course I need to put a little white dot on the gem and on the heart as well. So I'll let that completely dry. I'll give it a spray with the same varnish I used before, and then we're ready to cut this out. Now, one thing I noticed to do was just add some little stars into that background. At the start of the video I mentioned that it was going to be like a night sky or whatever, so just added some little simple cross shapes to do that. So I'm now at the nerve-wracking stage of cutting this thing out. And so I've got plenty of light to try and see what I'm doing. And just hope for the best. The lesson learned here would be not to paint over the edges of your template. so that you can still see it when you need to cut it out. And I've got a decent sharp blade on the scalpel. To try and get a clean cut if I can. Okay, I think we're okay. Looks not too bad. Got our blue back. The only thing I might do now is just paint over the edges to get rid of the white. Okay, a little bit of Techless blue. Okay, that's it, done now. I just stuck it on. I used Pritt Stick for that. Pritt Stick's a good glue to use for banners because it takes quite quickly. You still have a little bit of time to kind of adjust it and move it as you need. But in general, that's it. I couldn't film it because it was tricky to do with the 4 pieces to try and bend over the banner pole. I used a cocktail stick first just to bend the paper to get it started. But that's it done. So it's been quite a long process. Like I say, first banner I've ever painted. I would recommend it. It takes as long as painting the miniature does, but it's maybe worth it for 1 or 2 of them just to have a go. So hopefully you've enjoyed the video, and thanks very much for watching.